So if we're looking at these 6 steps, I'm a very big believer in incremental teaching. I'm a big believer in you don't want to give someone everything at once. When people think of teaching, especially salespeople, because when you come from a sales background, it obviously means you're highly dopamine dependent. So you like those little reward chemicals when you do something right. The problem is when we're teaching something, that gives us a dopamine hit as well. So there's a very natural tendency to just blurt out as much as you know because it makes you feel good. The problem with that is that when you're teaching something, the purpose of teaching isn't to give somebody information. The purpose of teaching is to provide you with information that you're going to retain and implement. So you need to remember it and use it. So my job is to give you this information as best I can in a way that you can remember it and use it. Now, if I give you all the information I know at once, what's the odds that you're going to retain and use that information? It's very little, because the brain needs time to actually learn something, to form synapses. It takes on average between about 5 and 12 times, 7 times on average that you need to learn something, generally 7 different ways, in order for those synapses to actually connect. Well, why is that? Well, if you actually look at the neuroscientific side of it, it's not just, hey, yeah, that's a thought. So you're actually grouping neurons, so brain cells together, and connecting them with electronic impulses. But there's actually special proteins that get formed over time with use to influence that connection better. And they actually form almost, like horses have blinders. They actually form a fatty sheath around the neurons to connect the 2 neurons so that the electronic impulses connect better. So to actually learn something, it generally takes a few times. So the less information you can give someone and the simpler that package can be, the faster that process is going to happen, and people are going to be able to use that information well. So understanding teaching, I'm not going to try and teach you every single thing at once. What I will go through is the most important part of the pitch, which is the body of it itself. But first, we have to start with number 1, which is our introduction. So, if we're talking about introducing ourselves to a customer or a client, what's the most important thing we have to do? Well, like I said, the first thing you have to do is disqualify yourself from being a traditional salesperson. There are a variety of ways that you can do this, but the most important ones of disqualifying and having a genuine connection where they think this person is a real person, not just some cheesy infomercial salesman, is you got to be able to build good rapport. So why building good rapport is so important is, again, the sales process is really a leadership process. You're leading them. We're over here, and it's like, hey, come over here. I'll show you what's cool over here. You're taking them somewhere. And in order for someone to accept your leadership, they have to trust you. They have to feel comfortable with you, and they have to be able to be vulnerable with you. That's what rapport does, because rapport really is just a combination of trust and comfort. If you can combine those 2 things and get somebody to like you, you're going to have a drastically easier experience through the rest of the pitch. And learning how to do that quickly and early on is a really powerful weapon to wield and affects every other part of your life as well. It's one of those sales skills, like many, that it doesn't just help you in your job, it'll help you in every area of life. I can strike up and keep conversation with anybody now. It doesn't matter how vastly different we are, how completely different our interests are. Just knowing the fundamental principles of rapport, you can carry conversation and make any person like you. I don't know about you guys, but to me, I think that's a superpower. The other thing that you want to be able to do is what's called an icebreaker. If I don't want somebody to think I'm a salesperson or your usual cheesy person, the easiest shortcut to that is to just outright tell them that you're not your usual salesperson. Remember, I referenced earlier that people will say I'm not interested. Well, it's not that they're not interested in you, they're not interested in salespeople. So the quicker that you can just outright say, don't worry, I'm not a salesperson, the better. A really good instance of that is, one of the ways I got my start in sales was actually fundraising. So working on behalf of non-for-profit organizations. And the first thing that I would do is make fun of other face-to-face salespeople. So whether it's in the shopping center, it's, hey, don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you solar or anything like that. Or, if you're doing door to door, it's like, don't worry, I'm not going to try and change your religion. Don't stress about that. So being able to have a comical and funny icebreaker, not only does it disqualify you from being a salesperson, but more often than not, it actually starts the process of rapport where they go, you know what, they're all right. I'll give them the time. People don't like the corny element of it, and there are various icebreakers that you can have. But as long as you have a confident frame and that your premise is to add value to them, and they can tell right away that your intention is to add value, you're going to be able to get away with a lot. The last part of an introduction, of course, is being able to engage them. So when you're engaging a customer into the actual pitch, what you're actually looking for is what I call permission to pitch. So you're looking for permission to pitch this customer. So you don't just want to go, hey, here's my pitch. You want them to be wanting your pitch. In some cases, you want them to be begging for your pitch. So being able to connect them right away, where they get to a point where it's like, all right, what are you selling? Where you've broken down that barrier enough where they actually want to hear what you have to say, it's so powerful. For instance, if I'll use my fundraising analogy again, because I'm such an avid, passionate fan of fundraising, because you learn sales skills, but at the same time, you're actually doing something good for the world. But what I like about fundraising is that you're not actually selling a product. The customer, if you think about it, if you're getting them to sign up to, let's say, an ongoing monthly donation, they don't actually get anything that they can take home with them. What you're selling is a good feeling. And so when you're speaking in terms of that emotion, you realize, I've seen a lot of great software and IT salesmen try and get into other forms of sales and not be able to do it. They like to stick to what they're good at, because generally with IT and software sales, the product does the selling for itself. And what I love about fundraising more than anything is that you can sell the emotion and you can sell yourself. And if you can do that, you can, like the saying that I always use is, if you can sell nothing, you can sell anything. So I really, really like that. So I use my fundraising example. So let's say I'm selling like a cancer research charity. And I'll say, awesome, so here, I'll do my icebreaker, so don't worry, I'm not going to try and save your soul or sell you solar panels or anything like that. We're just here with XYZ cancer research. Now, look, if you don't mind, do you know anyone who's gone through chemotherapy or radiation therapy? And if I'm trying to bring out new treatments and new therapies, right away, if they say yes, notice I didn't say, do you know anyone who's had cancer? Because that can be quite abrasive. You want to try and be as gentle when you connect someone emotionally as possible. But the moment that they say, yes, I have, you've now got an instant emotional tie. Now, you don't want to be using that to manipulate people, and you don't want to be using that for nefarious purposes. But it is really powerful to be able to inspire someone by feeling that moral obligation. Yes, I know someone, so I feel obligated to help them. But this is just an example. It can work just the same if I'm selling, let's say I'm selling knives, right? And someone comes in and I say, so what's the story? And they go, just need a set of knives. I go, okay, so have you had ones break? What do you do? Are you a chef? And they go, yeah, I'm a chef. Okay, cool. So you want a good set. You don't just want a dodgy one. So they go, yes. Right away, they've given you permission to pitch. So having the ability to tie someone in with your introduction is so powerful to the actual sales process, because they're basically saying, okay, you can pitch me. So you're really starting that first step of identifying that problem and I guess peeling back that first layer of the onion to identify why are you here in the first place. So when we're building rapport, right, because the icebreaker is pretty self-explanatory, and likewise I think the engagement is quite explanatory as well. But if you're looking at rapport is one of those things that is so powerful in sales, but it's actually not rocket science to figure it out. The initial iteration I got from this was from the all-time classic by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so there's an entire book on how to make people like you. There's some really basic ones in there by like smiling when you introduce yourself to someone. People just like it that you enjoy meeting them, right? But there are some really, really powerful tactics on making someone like you and feel comfortable with you that have so much benefit in sales. And there's really only two that you have to know. But I absolutely do recommend the book. It's not a very big book. It's, even if you're not a reader, it's going to really help up your sales game. But when you're actually trying to build rapport with someone, all you're trying to do is get them talking about things they like. You want them talking about their passions. People feel good when they're talking about themselves, and people feel good when they're talking about things that they like. It's one of my favorite parts of residential sales. People doing door to door is, if you're walking there and you see on the back of their car they've got a bumper sticker of their favorite footy team, their favorite football team. You know right away, if you know anything about them, you're going to get them talking about something they like. If you know anything about that team at all, or you know anything about the sport, you're going to be able to engage with them right away. And it's clickbait. It's literally in-person clickbait. If you say, hey, I noticed something you really like, this type of thing. I noticed something you really like, let's talk about that. So I say, oh, I see you're a Rabbitohs fan. They're having a pretty good year this year. As if I'm not, even if I know that you're a salesperson, and as if I'm not going to take the bait and talk about that. So being able to get people talking about something they like is a really powerful way to just engage that dialogue right away, where they don't just go, look, Matt, I'm busy. Because again, if there's any chance that you're a fan of that as well, they don't want to, you're one of their people. They don't want to turn that down. But that's just a hypothetical. But sometimes it's not always as clear. And this is especially if you're on phones or if you're, business to business. The metric that I use, or the framework I use, is what's called FORM, which is FORM. What do I mean by that? Well, these are generally the 4 categories of things you'll be able to dig and find something people like. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work, but F stands for family. O is occupation. Some people like talking about their job, believe it or not. R is recreation, which is what do you do for fun? And M is motivation, which is what are the things that motivate you, i.e. a sports team, things like that. So using the family, occupation, recreation, motivation framework, you can dig very quickly. And I actually do it almost like a tree diagram. I actually start with occupation. So I say, okay, so if I see someone in the middle of the day, I go, what's the story? You score a day off work. And they say, I'm registered day off. Okay, what do you do with yourself? And right away, you can get them talking, and they say, I'm a carpenter, I'm a painter, whatever the job might be. But let's say hypothetically they're not working. Let's say it's a stay-at-home husband or wife. And you say, okay, what's the story? You scored day off work, and they go, no, I don't really work. Oh, it's okay, you're just looking after the kids. Guess what? People love talking about their kids. I instantly think of that guy. It's, oh, do you want to see photos of my children? Like, people just like talking about their kids, and that's fantastic as well. Obviously, I'd imagine people like talking about what they like, and also people like talking about motivation. So if you're finding anything along those 4, you're going to be able to instantly get people talking about what they like. But wait, there's more. So I know I'm talking about not being a sleazy salesman, but I couldn't help myself. The other part of this section, though, is you don't just want to get them talking about what they like. The most important thing that you can do in rapport is the single most important concept of rapport. If you remember nothing else about rapport, I want you to remember this. People like people who are like them. Let's go back to how the brain works, and let's talk a little bit more about psychology here. The human brain is designed to what? Protect you. And so it naturally prefers things it likes to things, and things it knows to things it doesn't know. If you are someone who is like the person you're speaking to, they're going to like you more. The best salespeople in the world are the most adaptable salespeople in the world. The best salespeople in the world who can take someone who's super aggressive and abrasive and understand that in order to make a sale, you have to get into that persona as well. So you have to speak a little bit quicker and a little bit louder and be a little bit more assumptive. Likewise, if somebody is very, is one of those, conscientious personality types, and they're quite, introverted, you're going to have to slow down. You're going to have to give them more information. You're going to have to ask them questions so that they're engaged. Being able to adapt to the different types of people, they respect that and they appreciate that. But the easiest way to connect to people by far is understanding that if you can find anything in common with them at all, they're going to like you more. People like them. Have you ever been on like a night out and you just meet a random person and you just become instant best friends? Why that's happened is because you guys have connected on several things, several values or several hobbies or several passions, and that's what makes people like each other. That's all friendship is. Friendship is literally just finding people who like the same things as you do. So really understanding that and getting that concept, well, what we're trying to do is find some common ground. So the secret to common ground with rapport is easy. There's 3 ways that you can find it. 3 really, really easy ways to find common ground when you're trying to build rapport with customers. The first one is what I call mutual interest. Right? Mutual interest. I'll use a perfect example, right? If someone's let's say if someone's a New York Giants fan. I'm a big New York Giants fan, by the way. And right away, I see a New York Giants helmet somewhere, just as like a decorative piece of equipment. I'll say, "Oh, you're a Giants fan?" They go, "Yeah, mate. The team's looking amazing this year. Did you see all the people they got in free agency? They made some big signs. What do you think?" And they go, "Yeah, it's awesome. You like them as well?" "Yeah, massive fan. And, I've got them on my keychain." "Oh, no way." Great. We're instantly friends. Mutual interest is so powerful. But there's one that's actually even more powerful than that. Mutual disinterest. Stay with me here. If you can identify with somebody's pains and sufferings, if you can identify with the things in their life that they don't like, they're going to like you so much. You're going to feel so heard. It's one of the things people need most is they feel the need to be understood. And if you can make someone feel understood and validate their struggle, people love you for it. I had a perfect example. So one of my good friends runs a really successful chain of barbershops. And I went and got a haircut yesterday. Thanks for noticing. Right? I went and got a haircut yesterday. It was run by this old Turkish guy. And he was very, just one of those, I don't really want to talk to you. I'm just going to do my job. He's a very good haircut and very talented guy. But just one of those typical abrasive people. But I got him because anytime someone doesn't warm up to me, I've almost got this inner challenge that goes, I'm going to make them like me. And I got him talking, and I was like, oh, okay, so how long you been in the shop? He goes, oh, yeah. Teased it out of him that he owned the shop, he owned the barber shop. I go, mate, you'd have a nightmare with staff. And it was like I just hit this magic button. And he's like, how did you know? And the body language instantly went from this, closed off, angry man to this vibrant, open, genuine guy. And we ended up striking up a really great conversation after that. But understanding that in barbering, being able to retain staff, find good staff and retain them is very difficult. There's a lot of poaching that goes on. It's very hard to really invest and teach your guys because a lot of them their goal is to open up their own barbershop, and there's not a huge barrier to entry. So I know it's an extraneous example, but the moment that you can relate to someone's struggles, you're going to have them like you, and you'll have them in the palm of your hand. It's so powerful. Perfect example. Okay, what's the story? It's going down for work. Yeah, it rained out today. Okay, what do you do? Oh, I'm a carpenter. In Australia, we call it a chippy. I'm a chippy. And you go, oh, mate, it's middle of summer. You sure you don't want to do something else for the time being? And he goes, it's like, how do you know? Oh, I used to do the same thing. But I couldn't take it. I couldn't take the heat, man. But obviously now I'm indoors. And they go, yeah, cool. So being able to relate to that struggle, you're one of them now. You're one of their people. And the moment that you can be one of somebody's tribe, they're going to trust you immediately. So powerful. Now, there's one last-ditch effort that you can use here when you're trying to really get that deeper level of connection with someone to make them trust you and make them like you. Is if you can't get them on something that you're mutually interested in, you can't get something they're mutually disinterested in, you can always just make fun of yourself, right? So I call it self-effacing humor. Right? Self-effacing humor is so powerful because people like humility. A lot of times people like to see, most people are quite humble, and even people who aren't, they kind of like to think that they are, right? And if you can show the humility and the lack of ego to make fun of yourself, not only are you showing that you're there to have a good time and that you're not really worried about much, but that show of humility people are going to be able to connect with. So I remember one of my staff was he was a 6'4", 120 kilo ex-professional rugby player. And he would, and if he was ever pitching customers, and that turns out they worked any sort of trade, it's I see, let's use the carpenter example. So you're a carpenter. He goes, oh yeah, cool. And obviously he'd never done a trade. He's from England. He'd worked in disability services and things like that. But he goes, I really liked it, but look, my hands are much too delicate. And his hands were the hands of an ex-professional rugby player that had been broken several times. But every single time it would get a customer to laugh, because he would make fun of himself, show the humility, show the sense of humor, and get them to like him. Look, if you're not funny, might have a bit of time tinkering with it, but if you can have any sense of humor, I think people love it when you make fun of yourself. So that's the concept of rapport, and that's all tied into this introduction. So when you're building that introduction, the first thing you want to be doing is breaking the ice. The first thing when you introduce yourself is you want to be able to disqualify yourself right away. And that first 5 to 25 seconds is going to be so powerful, where you're happy, you're in a good mood, you're indifferent, you're not desperate. But really what you're doing is saying, look, I'm not your usual salesman. I'm not your usual guy. Or you're making fun of other people that are in the industry, right? The next thing you want to do is be able to build some level of rapport. The earlier that you can get a customer to like you and relate to you, and you remember, you don't want to go for too long, but the quicker you can make this process and the more potent you can make this process, the easier the rest of this pitch is going to go. Once you finish this, you're going to get to that point where the customer's like, okay, cool, fine, I give you permission, what are you selling? And they'll either actually verbalize that or you'll see it in the body language. And that's where you hit your engaging point, where you're actually asking your initial prodding question to start identifying that need. Sometimes it can be as simple as, especially if you've got a warm lead, if they've come to you, sometimes it can be as simple as, okay, so what ideally are you looking for yourself at the moment? What ideally would you like? And they say, and they'll come at you with what they want, or they'll come at you with a problem. And if they come at you with what they want, it's like, I really want a good painter. And that's where you can prod and say, okay, have you had a bad painter before? Or something like that. So really being able to engage is so powerful. So that is step number one.